who you want it to go to can read it. So you check the name against a photo ID or against a reputation-based system if you're feeling kind of adventurous. And you check the email address by making sure that the signature actually gets to that email address before it gets to a key server. But these two goals are really just subsets of the primary goal, and that is to verify the key identity binding. Yes?
Well, I haven't got why to check the email address. What would be the attack to this set if I don't check the email address?
If you don't check it, I'm sorry, what?
Well, yeah. Why should it check the email address?
Because it's like any other bit of information that you're putting on a user ID. It has nothing to do specifically with email address. It can be anything. So if you put your phone number in a user ID, I would not want to sign the user ID unless I had called you at that phone number and knew that it was your phone. You could put in like a web page in a user ID if you wanted, and I wouldn't want to sign the user ID unless I knew the web page was yours. When you sign a user ID, well, when you sign a key, you're not actually signing the key, you're signing a user ID. You can't sign a key without signing a user ID. You can sign multiple user IDs, but you have to sign at least one. And when you sign it, you are stating to the world, I think this information is accurate. And if you trust me, then you'll trust this. And you wouldn't want to sign something if it was incorrect. So if I put down my email address as billgates@microsoft.com, would you want to put your signature on it saying, this is a valid email address, if you trust me, trust it? And then somebody says, well, that guy's not Bill Gates, you just made a bad decision, I don't trust you anymore. Got somebody back there.
You said somebody can say you're not reachable under billgates@microsoft.com, but I saw hundreds of keys which are, me at gmx.de, and today I'm reachable under this email address, but my signature is there for the next 10 years, and I don't know if this email is him tomorrow.
Well, if you change your email address, if I say I used to be billgates@microsoft.com, and then I say, I might as well give the real guy his real email address, because I feel nice, what I should do is I should revoke the user ID.
Yeah, but I can't control this.
You can't. But if you can't verify it, then you shouldn't assert that it's true. And it might be out of your control, but you shouldn't have to worry about saying, I will not sign this because I don't believe it. It might be out of your control, but it's still ultimately your choice whether you put the stamp of approval on it or not. And if you have any doubts at all, you shouldn't do it. And that should be seen as their loss, not your loss.
I just wanted to comment on previous question. In a certain sense, the email is what counts the most, because if we use that for email, the automatic selection of which key will be used to encrypt the email, without asking you any further question, happens on the email address and not on the name of the person.
If you look at systems like FOAF, friend of a friend, they use the email address as the unique identifier for a person, because in theory only one person is going to be on the other end of an email address. Not assuming a list or whatever, but it's a unique identifier. It's as good as any other unique identifier, which is semi-unique, but it's something that can be fairly easy verified, and because most people are using GPG to do communication online, it seems a very good point to consider as, a very important thing to verify. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Why should governments be trusted to issue identity for the purposes of this more than personal knowledge?
I'm going to get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
I think, did you still have something? Okay, okay, I'll get to that in a little bit. But before I continue, let me just point out that user IDs are for human convenience only. You can put absolute and total garbage in there and tell everybody, my user ID has garbage in it. I don't want you to verify that. I just want you to verify the key material only. And this is acceptable. I mean, you can't verify a key without verifying a user ID, just by the way the system works. And if you don't want to be known by any contact information at all, one thing you might want to do is put a photo ID in there as your primary user ID. If you don't want to give out even a pseudonym, you can just say, well, you're going to see my face anyways if we meet in person, or maybe you want to put a voice recording as your primary user ID, and somebody can listen to your voice recording and listen to you on the phone and say, well, I think the voices are the same. It's just a matter of convenience. It's a way of doing this key to identity binding. And when you sign a key, you're actually stating not only is the key good, but I believe the key belongs to the person I believe it belongs to. And that's the most important part in building the web of trust. And as for that key identity binding, again, signatures are on user IDs. You always have to check the fingerprint because there's no way around it. It's just something that always needs to happen, whether you sign one user ID or you sign all of them. You need to check the fingerprint before you do it. And each user ID should be signed separately. So if somebody has 5 different email addresses on their key, then you should sign each one individually and send each signature to each respective email address, which is a real pain in the ass, but somebody wrote a nice Perl script to do it for you automatically. So there's no reason not to. And if you verify one user ID, then you're saying the key is good. A lot of people will say, well, if the key is good, then I might as well verify all of them, but you're still putting in the potential for bad information that somebody may sign blindly. And this is a mistake. You should never sign anything, UIDs included, unless you know 100% for sure that you believe that this is legitimate. So sign each one individually and resist the urge to say yes when it asks you if you want to sign everything at once. So again, I said this talk was prompted by some recent events at some key signing parties. I was at the DEF CON key signing party back in July, and there were 4 people there, including me, which was pretty pathetic. And one guy, I'd already signed his key, he'd already signed mine, and the other 2 people there presented pseudonyms. They gave their handles. They did not give their real names, and both of them did not want to show real photo ID. I was okay with this, but the other guy, he was furious. He thought they were making fun of the whole process. He thought that they were fucking everything up, and that, how dare you do this if you don't know what you're doing? So, one thing that he said is, I never sign a key that doesn't have a real name on it. There's no way to verify a handle. Does anybody agree with this? Does anybody disagree with this?
A handle can be a real name that's used in loads of community and people recognize you by your handle. And the handle is actually the quality the quality feature that you want to have signed.
Yes, absolutely. So can somebody tell me who this guy is? Who said Jeff Moss? Okay. How do you know his name is Jeff Moss? I'm sorry? You've met him? Have you seen his photo ID? No, neither have I. But I would sign a key that has this person. If I knew this person gave me a key and the name was Jeff Moss on it, I would not need to see photo ID. Does anybody here disagree with that? I'm sure somebody does. No? Okay. Well, the reason is, if everybody else in a very large event knows this guy is Jeff Moss, it doesn't matter what name is on his photo ID. It doesn't. Because if somebody says Jeff Moss, well, in this community, in this context, this is the guy you'll probably think about. And whether his name is that or not, whether, if he was born as something completely different and just goes by it as a pseudonym, and it's not his real legal name on all of his documents, it doesn't matter, because you're just doing the key to identity binding, and the identity isn't the name. It's a completely abstract concept, and it's this guy, whether it's his real name or not. What about this guy? Does anybody know who this guy is? Somebody give me this guy's name? That's not his name.
Eric Corley.
Yep, Eric Corley. But you know, if I said Emmanuel Goldstein, not the guy from the book, who would you think about? You know? Which one's the real thing? Anybody? Anybody? If I said Emmanuel, who would you think about? You know, if you were talking to Emmanuel at 2600.com online, which one of these two guys do you think you would be talking to?
What's the email address?
Emmanuel at 2600.com. So which one's the real thing? You don't need to know the real name. You don't need to even know the handle completely in order to verify the key to identity binding. Because Emmanuel at 2600.com is a lot more likely to be that weird guy than that weird guy. It's just the way it works. And people know this not from checking photo IDs or verifying email addresses, but just having a decent amount of research into the social network that builds the community. And that's the important part. And a lot of people don't seem to believe this. So, another common objection is a person only has one unique identity. You know, if I last year at the key signing party here, a couple of people were kind of upset with me that I had a number of different keys on the list. In fact, I think I kind of overdid it and had 4 keys on the list. 4. I had a DSA key and an RSA key for my personal email address, and I've since revoked the RSA key. I had one for a different project I was working on, and I had one for my work. This year I had 2 keys, my personal one and my work key. And people have said, this is too much. You know, why not just have 2 different user IDs on one key? And my response has been, these are 2 different identities. These are 2 different aspects of myself that I would like to keep separate. And just because I'm not using a handle for one and a real name for another doesn't mean they're not 2 different aspects of my identity that should be kept separate. So, what happens if you go by a pseudonym? Let's start off pretty easy. So, in the hacker community, you go by a pseudonym, and you don't want that to be associated with your real name at work, because you know, if your boss at work found out that you were acidburn@hackers.com, you might get fired. So you have 2 different keys, and who'd sign this key? Would anybody here sign this key? Let's assume she's a real person. Who here would sign this key? Yes. So I've heard. So I've heard. Who wouldn't? That's not the whole room. Come on, guys. Okay. Why wouldn't you do it? Anybody? Why wouldn't you do it? You don't know her, but she's in a movie that millions of people worldwide have seen. How can you argue that? That's fair. That's fair. How? It's not a matter of, you know, you look at her ID and it says acid burn on it or whatever, but enough people know somebody by name, then why isn't it good enough? You know, what if it was slightly different? Would you sign this key? What if this person in this movie, or this real, fake, real person, identified herself as Angelina Jolie? Would you sign her key? Who here would sign it? Why? Okay, if you didn't see your passport.
Sorry, I don't have a microphone. If I had seen a passport for this lady that looked good,
But what if you saw her name in the credits of the movie?
I'm not, if I'm doing GPG key signing, I'm not doing filmography key signing, so I don't care about what she did in the movie
Okay.
or these many movies. If I saw a passport that looked good to me as in not fake, which I don't really know, of course, but if I saw a passport with a picture that looked like her in any of these movies, and then
Okay.
I would, of course.
Okay, well, under the same token, what about this? You know, is this any different? What if this was the picture associated with the key as opposed to this? Would you have any different thoughts on signing this key if it was that?
You should have seen many Debian developers' passports. You would sign that.
Does anybody not believe that her name is Angelina Jolie? Does anybody here doubt that? Why? But does it matter? If I were to be like, yeah, man, you know, I was dreaming the other night, and I'd totally bang that Angelina